Fayetteville, Arkansas, Mark chiming in. He said, how will history view the hierarchy of greatest coaches in this generation? I don't know if you realize how good a question this is, Mark. So right now you'd think to yourself, well, Nick Saban's way up there. Kirby Smart has emerged. Jim Harbaugh is doing some things that maybe even we didn't think he would do at Michigan a little while ago. Ryan Day still waiting on him to take the national championship step. Dabo Swinney had a national championship run going, has fallen off just a touch, but here we are. We're in 2023. So I'm going to assume this generation means, like, let's say a 15-year stretch. The answer is unknowable, which makes this so fun. So I think Nick Saban, he's got his legacy pretty well cemented. Nick Saban, we know, is going to be a legend until the end of time. Kirby Smart, even if he were to retire today, we would talk about him like we talk about Stone Cold Steve Austin. Hey, that white-hot star, it may not have burned for a decade and a half, but when it was on, and no one could beat it. Austin in the late 90s, early 2000s, Kirby in the early 2020s. So he's solidified himself. I think Dabo will be spoken about similarly with his run from, 2015 to around 2019. He had 2 championships, beat Nick Saban twice to do it. They were head-to-head with Bama, played him 4 years in a row at the height of the Nick Saban dynasty. No one had more success against him than Dabo Swinney. 2 times in a championship situation, he beat Nick Saban. So that would be pretty well solidified. What we can't know is if we're talking to each other in 2050, we can't know what the rest of the Dabo story is. We can't know if we're going to say, Dabo, remember him? He won a couple of titles, had a great run in the teens, and then the early 20s, there was some transition, and then he got his act together, and they went on another run in the mid-2020s. We can't know that. We can't know with Kirby Smart if we'll say, hey, remember when Smart won those back-to-back titles, and it was just the beginning of him winning half a dozen over the next 15 years? Or might we say, remember when Smart won those 2 titles and we thought he was on his way to winning half a dozen, but then all these unforeseen circumstances popped up and he never won another one? You have no way of knowing. I think I have an idea that it will be a little more towards winning at least another one than not, but I can't know for sure. Lincoln Riley, how is history going to talk about him? In 2050, is Lincoln Riley the guy who showed up out of nowhere at Oklahoma, flashed on the national scene, rewrote the offensive record books, had Heisman quarterbacks and first-round draft picks, then he went to USC, but they could never play defense. Defense kept him from winning a national championship. It was like the Phoenix Suns scenario from back in the day when I used to pay attention to the NBA. Man, they could put up like 130 a night, couldn't play defense. Therefore, didn't really do much in the NBA postseason. Is that what Lincoln Riley and USC will be? I don't know. Because we're still in Natasha Bedingfield mode. The rest is still unwritten. Maybe the best is still unwritten. And then you've got guys like Ryan Day. Are we going to talk about how, well, it's history. You're going to talk about him as being fool's gold who rode the Urban Meyer wave for a little while, but eventually he couldn't top Michigan and Jim Harbaugh overtook him and he was out of a job? Or is it going to be, hey, he's kind of like Kirby Smart was. He got close a few times early, didn't do it, but then when he finally broke through, wow, he really broke through. We got all these coaches that we could talk about like that. And that's not even to mention some of the newer ones on the scene. How is history going to remember Mario Cristobal at Miami? There's no way to know that right now. Brent Venables at Oklahoma. Steve Sarkisian at Texas. There's no way to know that right now. And if you think you do, I would encourage you. Go back and look at some of the coaches that you've long since developed an opinion about. Go look at Dabo. Dabo didn't win a title in his second or third year at Clemson. It took a little while. There was a year in the Orange Bowl where West Virginia hung like 70 on them. So it was never horrific, but it looked for a little while like Dabo wasn't going to be able to overtake Jimbo Fisher and FSU. That's what it looked like for a little while. Now imagine how crazy that sounds now with the benefit of hindsight. Speaking of Jimbo, how's history going to remember him at A&M? Now, we may not have to wait until 2050. This could be a 2024 conversation, depending on how this year goes with him. That's always a fun question. I mentioned Stone Cold Steve Austin earlier. I used to love watching pro wrestling. One of my least favorite parts of the entire genre, if you will, is not the performance art itself. I don't like the subculture the internet created of this entire world where every fan thinks that they're inside. Every fan's in on it. Every fan uses terminology like you would only hear once upon a time spoken backstage at a wrestling event by people inside the business. And I hate the culture in wrestling fandom where everyone wants to know what's going to happen. Makes no sense to me. Makes no more sense than seeking out spoilers for the next episode of Barry or Succession, two great shows going on right now. And so I hate that. I don't try and do that with college football. Make no mistake, yeah, I have prediction fun just like the rest of you, but I'm totally fine sitting here not knowing what the future holds. I'm completely fine not putting together a list of the top 10 coaches that I think will be in 2027. I'll just let it come to me. I'm fine with that.